Tonight, over 1,000 COVID deaths in a single day, the highest nationwide toll in weeks. California now surpassing New York for most cases in the nation. 3 more states mandating masks, and the new message from Dr. Fauci. NBC News goes inside one of the first schools to reopen in America. The new safety measures and what the CDC director said today. Would he send his own grandchildren back? As we come on the air, President Trump holding another coronavirus briefing after saying the outbreak would probably get worse. And for the first time in the 2020 race, Joe Biden and Barack Obama together in person. Their new message. The massive $2 billion vaccine deal, how many doses they're aiming to deliver and when. The U.S. ordering China's consulate in Houston to shut down. The allegations of spying and the images. Were consulate workers burning documents? President Trump announces a surge of hundreds of federal agents to Chicago on the heels of a shootout at a funeral. Our NBC News investigation, what some Wells Fargo customers were shocked to find out. And the tropical storm threat, where it's headed, the new track.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening, everyone. California tonight with a dubious distinction, now home to the most coronavirus cases in the country. But the reality is records and benchmarks are falling almost daily across many parts of the country, including the single-day death totals. So many numbers, and sadly too easy to forget, they represent real lives. In dozens of states, the numbers are worsening, and progress is hard to come by. We have expanded coverage this evening, starting with Miguel Almaguer.
As hospitals and hotspots face a crushing wave of COVID patients, tonight the nation's death toll hitting a staggering new high for July. More than 1,000 deaths reported in 24 hours.
These deaths are premature preventable deaths.
With 40 states responding to an increase in infections, tonight California surpassing New York for the nation's most cases, though fewer were tested, and the death toll is more than 4 times higher in New York. The sobering milestone out west plagues a region that led the country in stay-at-home orders, but is now being crippled by COVID.
Here in Los Angeles, amid long lines for testing, officials are struggling to conduct contact tracing for those who test positive, perhaps fueling the spread of the virus.
The news is also grim along the Arizona border. In Santa Cruz County, a jaw-dropping 55% of those tested yesterday have the virus.
It's a very serious situation.
To slow the spread nationwide, today retail giants Home Depot and Kroger began requiring masks inside all locations, joining states like Ohio, Minnesota, Indiana, and cities like Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, which are also expanding their own policies tonight amid a crush of COVID cases and a warning the virus will linger.
I don't really see us eradicating it, but I think we will bring it down to such a low level that we will not be in the position that we're in right now.
At Niagara Falls, images of American tour boats tightly packed and Canadian vessels with plenty of room, an example of how 2 countries are addressing the virus. New York's tri-state area now warning visitors from 31 states they must quarantine if they enter the region. In Manhattan, Larry Kelly spent 51 days on a ventilator, finally cleared to go home today.
My wife saved my life. She wouldn't let them pull the plug.
But not all families are so lucky. Kerry Crosswhite lost his fight against COVID overnight, surrounded by his wife and children, there to say goodbye.
So we were able to have the opportunity to tell him how much we love him.
Tonight, the lives behind the numbers as the death toll and the heartbreak mounts. Miguel Almaguer, NBC News, Los Angeles.
As COVID infections surge, the shape of the new school year remains uncertain in many districts tonight for students, parents, and teachers. NBC's Blaine Alexander visited a district in Tennessee that's one of the first in the country to reopen.
It's not the welcome back these students are used to.
97.2.
Temperature checks, masked faces, and desks at a distance greeting students at Alcoa City Schools, the 2,000-student district in Tennessee, among the first in the country to return to in-person learning with staggered attendance.
So if I have a class of 20 kids, 5 will come every day. And so it'll take the whole week before I see my whole class.
Tennessee has seen more than 80,000 COVID cases, but fewer than 300 active cases in the city of Alcoa.
Did you have any concerns with coming back?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's why so many discussions and sleepless nights and conversations and what if questions have happened, because we want to do what's best for our students and for our children.
Across the country, with the first day fast approaching, many students and teachers are still in limbo about how and when school will start. In Kansas, the state school board rejected the governor's request to delay the start of school until after Labor Day. Today, CDC Director Robert Redfield says he believes schools are safe enough to send his own grandchildren.
Those 8 of them are school age. I'm 100% that they can get back to school.
With many districts raising concerns about how to pay for the necessary changes, today the NAACP filed a lawsuit against Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, claiming a new rule would effectively divert some federal money from lower-income schools to wealthy private schools.
To take money away from districts and give to families who have the means to provide virtual or social distance education opportunities in their private school setting is unconscionable.
In a statement, the Department of Education slams the lawsuit as political, writing, "This administration is committed to supporting all students get back to learning, including students of color." Back in Tennessee,
how do you feel about that mask?
Not that good because it just makes me really hot.
Stopping the spread is now lesson number 1.
And we're teaching the kids life skills they can use because this may not go away anytime soon.
And these plans are in place until Labor Day, when they reevaluate to see what, if anything, needs to change. Lester?
All right, Blaine Alexander tonight. Thank you. President Trump held another briefing on the pandemic late today, telling people again to wear masks, touting a deal regarding a possible vaccine candidate, and again pushing for schools to reopen. Our Kristen Welker is at the White House.
Tonight, flooding the zone. President Trump appearing in the White House briefing room for the second day in a row, announcing a major agreement with the drug company Pfizer to get millions of doses of vaccines to the public once there is one.
Today, my administration reached a historic agreement with Pfizer to produce and deliver 100 million doses of their vaccine immediately following its approval. Hopefully, the approval process will go very quickly, and we think we have a winner there.
And while the president has been pushing to reopen schools, tonight he was pressed. Is he comfortable with his son and grandchildren going to the classrooms?
Well, I am comfortable with that. And we do have a national strategy, but as you know, ultimately it's up to the governors of the states.
President Trump is locked in a fierce battle for re-election, with Joe Biden leading in the polls. Biden today sharply criticizing the president, who has referred to COVID as the China virus.
We have racists, and they've existed. They've tried to get elected president. He's the first one that has.
Tonight, asked to respond.
I've done more for Black Americans than anybody, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. Nobody has even been close. Thank you very much, everybody.
Meanwhile, Biden deploying his biggest political weapon, releasing a clip of a taped in-person conversation with his former boss, Barack Obama.
I've always known about you, Joe.
The video also aims to draw a contrast with President Trump, who said this in March when pressed on testing failures. Do you take responsibility for that?
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
Can you imagine standing up when you're a president saying it's not my responsibility? I take no responsibility. It's not. I mean, literally.
Those words didn't come out of our mouths while we were in office.
Though the president was asked again about taking responsibility over the weekend.
Do you take responsibility for that?
Look, I take responsibility always for everything.
Now, as for the briefing here, the president said he spoke to Dr. Fauci earlier today. Meanwhile, Senate Republicans are discussing a possible short-term extension to $600 unemployment benefits, which expire at the end of the month. It's not clear the White House will support that, though. It comes as Republicans are signaling they're close to reaching a broader agreement with the White House for a long-term relief package, but then they have to negotiate with Democrats. Lester.
All right, Kristen Welker, thanks. That vaccine agreement the president mentioned is a sign of growing hope and perhaps confidence that a safe and effective vaccine will be developed. The government's deal with Pfizer, worth almost $2 billion for a potential vaccine, even before it's approved. Our Tom Costello has more details.
It's the biggest deal yet in the government's Operation Warp Speed to rush a vaccine to the homeland. A $2 billion agreement with Pfizer and a smaller German company for millions of vaccine doses that the government would then provide free of charge to the public.
We can acquire 100 million doses of this vaccine as early as December of 2020.
Pfizer actually has 4 vaccine candidates. Early test results show they produce antibodies that have the potential to neutralize COVID. So far, none has received FDA approval, but critical phase 3 human trials start within days.
What assurances can you give the American public that $2 billion is going to be money well spent?
I think, the 100 million doses would definitely prove to be great value for money given the enormous healthcare and economic cost that this coronavirus pandemic has reaped.
Each person would need 2 doses and a booster shot. Scott Balaban is an immunologist who volunteered for the study. Just yesterday, he received his 2nd dose at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. His side effects so far, a few aches similar to a flu shot.
I honestly feel lucky. To be ahead of the game, so to speak, to receive a vaccine that might work. This early after we learned about the disease.
Vaccines are getting tested real time, says Dr. Anthony Fauci, with 70,000 new cases each day.
That's bad news for public health, but that certainly facilitates the development and the proving of the efficacy of a vaccine.
Pfizer isn't alone. The government has also signed a $1.6 billion deal with vaccine maker Novavax, and it's paid 4 drug makers for R&D. Tonight, it's looking more and more possible that Americans will get a vaccine shot early next year. Lester?
Pretty amazing. All right, Tom Costello, thank you. This evening, after the U.S. accused Chinese hackers of trying to steal American vaccine research, a major new escalation to tell you about. For the first time, the State Department ordering a Chinese consulate here to close over spying charges. NBC's Andrea Mitchell has late details.
Flames seen in the courtyard of the Chinese consulate in Houston overnight, appearing to show documents burning after the State Department ordered the consulate to close by Friday. Only hours after the U.S. accused 2 Chinese hackers working with China's government of trying to steal research on COVID vaccines, treatment, and testing from U.S. companies and others around the world. Houston firefighters responded but were not permitted in. The State Department says the closure is intended to protect American intellectual property and Americans' private information. And Senate Intelligence Chairman Marco Rubio tweeted, "China's Houston consulate is a massive spy center. Forcing it to close is long overdue."
We're going to take actions that protect the American people, protect our security, our national security, and also protect our economy and jobs.
The administration's dramatic action comes as President Trump has slapped tariffs on China for unfair trade practices and blames China for not alerting the world to the coronavirus.
It's a shame that it happened. It shouldn't have happened. China should have stopped it.
Causing Democrats, who have also been warning about Chinese hacking, to worry that today's action is also an attempt to divert attention from the COVID crisis.
If China made mistakes, they need to be called out for them. But the president is trying to deflect attention from his mistakes in the United States that have led us to have the highest death toll in the world.
China's foreign ministry called the move an unprecedented escalation and promised to respond with firm countermeasures, raising fears of an escalating feud between the world's 2 largest economies. Lester?
Andrea Mitchell this evening. Thank you. In 60 seconds, the president orders hundreds of federal agents to Chicago after a mass shooting there, the growing battle over using federal forces in America's cities. Back now with President Trump following through on his vow to send federal resources into Chicago on the heels of a mass shooting there. We get details from NBC's Gabe Gutierrez.
The drive-by shooting outside a funeral sent bystanders scrambling on Chicago's South Side.
We thought it was a war out here.
At least 15 people wounded, several of them critically. Tonight, the police superintendent has this message for the 117,000 gang members in the city.
Put your guns down.
Over the weekend, at least 63 people were shot in Chicago. There were at least 116 murders in just the last month, a nearly 200% jump over the same period last year. President Trump now says he's sending more federal law enforcement resources there and to Albuquerque and Kansas City. The operation named after 4-year-old shooting victim Legend Taliaferro.
No mother should ever have to cradle her dead child in her arms simply because politicians refuse to do what is necessary to secure their neighborhood and to secure their city.
The administration says these extra agents will be different than the tactical teams recently sent to Portland to protect federal property. Overnight, protesters barricaded the federal courthouse with wooden beams. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin is there.
While they're setting up a steel barricade outside the federal courthouse, inside, the state's attorney general is asking for a restraining order against the federal agents that are here.
From Atlanta to Detroit to Memphis, this summer's violence has been brutal. In Kansas City, where murders are up 40%, the police department asked for some federal help tracking illegal guns.
What we don't need is what you're seeing on the streets of Portland and federal troops that are taking over core functions of law enforcement in American cities.
Here in New York, officers with riot shields today cleared out a protest encampment out in front of City Hall, but the mayor called President Trump's threat to send in more federal agents unconstitutional. Lester?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. A new twist in the deadly ambush of the family of a New Jersey federal judge. The FBI says evidence links the suspected gunman Roy Den Hollander to the killing of another lawyer in California over a week earlier. Investigators believe Den Hollander killed the judge's son and critically wounded her husband at their home on Sunday. Den Hollander was later found dead of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. And Tropical Storm Gonzalo has formed in the central Atlantic. It's expected to become a hurricane by tomorrow. Parts of the Caribbean could see strong winds and heavy rain this weekend. Up next, troubling new questions about one of the country's biggest banks, what some customers say they were shocked to find. Back now with our NBC News investigation and the new outrage at Wells Fargo. Customers shocked to discover the bank hasn't been crediting them for their mortgage payments during the pandemic. Stephanie Gosk now with the reason why.
Tammy Wilson and her husband David say they've always paid their Wells Fargo mortgage on time, even during COVID-19.
We're managing our money, and so we're doing okay.
Recently, they discovered their payments are not being counted. Tammy says Wells Fargo enrolled them in a government program that protects people who are financially hurt by COVID, putting a hold on their mortgage. But they don't need the help.
I have the ability to pay. I want to pay.
You specifically said to Wells Fargo, I don't need any help. I don't want any help.
Yes.
She's far from alone. Consumers in at least 14 states have reported something similar has happened to them.
I was really angry first. I was like, I didn't ask for this.
Wells Fargo called schoolteacher Eileen Roth to tell her the mortgage protection plan was ending, but she says she never wanted it in the first place. Wilson and Roth contacted NBC News after we ran a story online about Troy Harlow, who has been working his way out of bankruptcy and now fears he won't make it because the mortgage payments he's been making aren't being credited.
If it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody.
Harlow is part of a lawsuit against Wells Fargo. He and the others are concerned that being part of this COVID relief program could affect their ability to borrow money or refinance.
We're actively in the process of refinancing. Having that on there obviously it's a detrimental.
For Wells Fargo, the fourth largest bank in the country, this comes after a string of controversies.
This is the same bank that 5-6 years ago got caught creating fake credit card accounts and fake bank accounts in the scale of the millions.
Following several high-level resignations, the bank paid out $3 billion to the government in a settlement related to the fake accounts. On this latest issue, the bank says in a statement, we may have misinterpreted customers' intentions in a small number of cases. We are working directly with customers to ensure they are receiving the assistance they need. The bank adds it has already removed customers from the program who have asked.
Good boy, buddy.
The Wilsons are still looking for assistance.
I feel let down. I think that if they actually wanted to help me, they would be helping me.
It's unclear how many people have been affected by this. If you have concerns about your own mortgage, request a copy of your full credit report. Lester?
Stephanie Goss, thank you. Up next, she's drawing on her war effort from long ago and inspiring America. Finally, the all-out effort to do her part in the COVID battle by a woman who knows what it means to join the fight. Here's Katie Beck.
At 17 years old, May Cryer helped build warplanes to save American lives. Today, at 94, her hands still work at factory speed for the very same reason.
How did you get the idea to do this?
Oh, well, it was funny. I gave up my rivet gun for a sewing machine.
She's making masks for the masses for about 8 hours each day. The red polka dot pattern woven deep in Cryer's fabric. Once herself a Rosie the Riveter.
It's very rewarding. That little piece of red and white polka dot stands for something. It's a symbol for what the American women did.
Cryer made a few at first for family and friends. Now 1,000 pending orders. Strangers across the country saluting women's service while fighting America's new war against a virus. Cryer even finds time to still mow her own grass while pushing Congress to give all Rosies one Medal of Honor for their work.
I'm hoping my little mask will save one life, at least more than that, hopefully.
Inspired once to serve her country and now to protect it. Katie Beck, NBC News.
We can all learn a lot from May. That is Nightly News. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.